Good afternoon from China. Today, we'll talk about the China-Africa cooperation and the role of Europe in the changing world. I will speak about three topics. One is introduction to China-Africa cooperation, history and current development. The second is Chinese aid and African development, and related issues on debt problems of African countries, transparency of Chinese aid, and the last one is possible cooperation of China and Europe in the development of African countries. First, we talk about the China-Africa history. We all know that China and Africa has a long history. The relations last for more than 2,000 years. These 2,000 years can be divided into three stages. Before the three stages, there was a fairy tale as well as a discovery about the China-Africa relations. You see in one of the Chinese history book, the book called 周世纪年, it's a biography of Mu Qianqi, one of the kings of Western Zhou dynasty, met the queen of Sheba in the year 1000 before crisis. This picture shows the Sheba, and of course this is just a fairy tale. It is said that a mountain called Kuilin in Western China. This mountain is very high. It seems in the ancient Chinese people, it is the door from the earth to the heaven. So we call it the Qianzi. So it's the emperor. That the Mu Qianzi Zhuan means the emperor's biography. You see the export of Chinese, that means the sinologist from Netherlands, Dolphin Dutch said, this is just to make a joke. And the history shows that a female mummy of the Egyptian 21st dynasty wore silk clothes, which was discovered by Austrian scientists in 1993 from an Egyptian tomb. He found the silk in the hair of the female mummy. Before this, we talked this, the female mummy's silk, that means found in the hair, and also the fairy tale. Then we go to the Chinese direct communication stage. That means before the 2000, the year of 200 and the AD 1050. We all know the Silk Road. The Silk Road is Zhang Qian to the west and opened the Silk Road, visiting Alexander, Egypt. Egyptian magician visited China in Han Dynasty. Rome descendants are in China today. The history of the Silk Road. We can go to detail that Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty decided in the year 1038 before crisis to forge military alliances with kingdoms west of his northwestern archenemy of Xiongnu tribes. He charged General Zhang Jian with this mission, giving him 100 of his best fighting men and valuable gifts to seal the military cables with Da Yue Zhi and others. This Da Yue Zhi is also a great tribe in that time. 13 years later, having been a Xiongnu hostage for 10 years, General Zhang returned to the imperial Han with only one other member of the original party. Though he had failed to make a single military alliances, General Zhang, enthralled with information of the 36 commercially vibrant kingdoms west of China's frontier. Those places include one named Li Xian, also called Li Qian. Foreign scholars as well as Chinese scholars believe it should be Alexandria in Egypt. In the year 115 before Christ, Zhang Jian went to the west again, and this time he brought back some Egyptian contentious whom believed to be the first Africans visit China. The Silk Road started from Chang'an to west, passing through the Yumen Guan to Central Asia, West Asia, and via Damascus, Mecca to Egypt. In the year 64 BC and the 30 BC, Roman occupied Syria and Egypt respectively and expanded to the east. The 40,000 soldiers belonging to the 7 Roman legions led by Crassus were defeated by the strong country Anxi in West Asia in the year 53 BC. Crassus died in the battle, and his eldest son led about 6,000 soldiers, broke out the encirclement, and escaped to Central Asia, joining Xiongnu. 3 years later, when China sent armed forces to suppress the Xiongnu and won completely in Zhizhi city in today's the Republic of Kazakhstan, more than 1,000 Xiongnu soldiers, including 145 Roman soldiers, became the prisoner, who were settled down in Yongchang County, Gansu province, in the Hexi corridor by the Chinese emperor. Even today, you can find tens of them different than Chinese in appearance. So you can see this picture. These people, it is said, is from the Italy, but is now Chinese residents in Gansu province today. About 30 years ago, or 30 or 40 years ago, the story is well told by Chinese and also by the Japanese and the Koreans. And several Chinese history books wrote about this fact, and the British sinologist and scientist Joseph Needham visited the place and found the residents' chips very red, which seldom see in China. From the Han Dynasty, that means come to the Chinese Tang Dynasty. One of the Chinese Du Huan, who wrote a book, Xinfeng, about his African trip, became the first Chinese writing books about Africa. And also in Tang Dynasty, the first Black Africans come to visit China. This is the book Xinfeng. You see, the greatest volume of goods were traded along the Silk Road during the Tang Dynasty, particularly during the first half of this period. The Chinese predominantly imported gold, gems, ivories, glass, perfumes, dye, and textiles, and they exported furs, ceramics, spices, jade, silk, bronze, and lacquer objects and irons. So you see, the four great inventions, power, compass, paper making, and movable type, is going to west through Africa. That means through the war of the prisoners, including Du Huan. Just now I mentioned one of the, that means the first Black people come to visit China in Tang Dynasty. This tomb, this statue is discovered from one of the tombs in Chang'an city from Xi'an. It's in the year 1987, discovered from ancient Chinese tombs. This is also a long story because of the time. I just give you just a shorter introduction. And for short, Du Huan is one of the war prisoners between China and also the West Asian countries. And when the war defeated by the foreigners, Du Huan becomes one of the prisoners and have been taken to Africa. And after more than 10 years, he returned from Africa to China and wrote the book Xinfeng. From Han Dynasty, followed the Tang Dynasty, and then followed by the Yuan Dynasty of China. Wang Dayuan is a very famous Chinese traveler who traveled several African countries and wrote about travel notes on foreign countries. The Chinese name, the book's name is Dao Yi Zhile. And also he wrote about the several African countries in his book, about the people, about the building, about the daily life and folklore of African countries. After that, we are going to the Chinese Ming Dynasty, the earliest world map, 大明混一图, which drew the right outline of the African continent. And also Marco Polo, who visited China by the Silk Road on the prairie, and the African traveler, famous traveler Ibn Battuta from Morocco, visited China by the sea. These three evidence all happened in the Yuan dynasty. Just now I said Wang Dayuan, who wrote the book about Africa in Yuan dynasty, and this is 大明混一图. It means is the world map, the first world map in China, and also the first world map in the world. This map drew the right outline of the shape of Africa. You see this here is the Africa continent. It is very similar to the African, the outline like a triangle. This map is very big. It is nearly 4 meters long and 5 meters wide, drew in the year 1389 in Ming Dynasty. And in the Ming Dynasty, Zheng He opened the Silk Road on the sea, visited Eastern Europe, Eastern coast African countries 4 times. One of his junks sailed to Italy and ignited the Renaissance. And Chinese sailors dissidents are in Africa today. And this is a very interesting story. We see Zheng He opened the Silk Road on the sea. We also saw the maritime sea road. He visited in his 7 navigations to the Western Ocean, that means the Indian Ocean, of which 4 times he visited the eastern coast of Africa. In one of his voyage, one of his big ships sank outside Kenya, the Partey Island. The Partey Island is near the Lamu Island. And the sailors take the big, from the big ship and take the small ship from the big one and take the Chinese goods, mainly Chinese tea, silk, and China, like the bowls and plates, to the small boat, and they try to get the land. That means to the Partey land. Partey Island is very close to them. And they go to they settle down in the village. Today, in the Partey Island, the village called China Village. This is a picture of China Village. Just now, Dr. Qi Qiangfei introduced me that I worked for People's Daily for 8 years in South Africa, and I covered this story and visited the island 4 times. This picture was taken by me. And in that village, the China Village, we found the Chinese dissident, who is the Zheng He's boatman, and the fisherman's descendants. You see, this old man, they carry the water, use the poles, like today in China, in countryside. We all know that the African people, they carry the barrel, the food, the barrel, or the water on the head. This old man used this pole. He told me his fathers and sisters come from China. You see this girl, who is also a Chinese descendant. And when I visited the island, he was studying in the Lamu girls' middle school. And after that, she came to China and became a Chinese student to study medicine, Chinese medicine. And in the year 2005, that means is the 600 years of Zheng He's voyage to the West Asia. And because Zheng He's voyage to the West Asia from the year 14,005 is his first voyages. At that year, we Chinese celebrated the 600 years of Zheng He's voyages, and we invited this girl And also this gentleman is from the Malindi city of Kenya. Malindi is just in the north of Mombasa city. This gentleman is the mayor of Malindi city. Why we invited these two persons to visit China? Because they represent the friendship of China and Africa. This girl I just mentioned, she became a Chinese student in China and studied Chinese medicine. And 2 years ago, she finished his scholars and got a doctor's degree. And this mayor of Malindi, we invited him because during that year, when Zheng He visited Africa, the Malindi emperor sent a giraffe to China, to Chinese emperor, to show the friendship of China and Africa. This is a very interesting story because today we don't have too much time. I just give a shorter idea. And this is the girl whose name is Muammar Sharif. This picture taken from Nanjing Chinese Medicine College when I visited her on the year 2009. And this gentleman is a Chinese doctor. He said his father and grandfather is a Chinese doctor. He can use the Chinese needles, acupuncture, and Chinese medicine, and Chinese massage. And is very famous in the Pattaya Island. This when I visited him in the year 2003. And you see in the Pattaya Island, this is the Chinese tomb. It's very interesting. It's have a sharp difference from the local tombs. And when I following Zheng He's footsteps in Africa, I also visited Somalia. And Somalia, they also have a Zheng He village. Like Kenya, Pattaya Island, they said they have a China village. And these local people, they playing the games of mahjong. It is said that Zheng He brought this to Africa. So after the direct communication between China and Africa, we come to the indirect communication stage. That means from the year 15,000 to the year 1949. This period, we all said that we all know when Vadas da Gama, they crossed the African to the India and found the new route in the sea, and the Europeans occupied the Indian Ocean. So China and Africa's direct communication stopped, and they have an indirect communication. And after this period, we come to the overall developing stage of China-African relations. That means from the year 1949 to present. And this period is the independent, loyal, friendly partnership between China and Africa. And this period from 1949 to the present was one of the development from independent strategic partnership to direct diplomacy. The founding of the new China opened up a new chapter in China-Africa relations. From its founding, the new China's relationship with Africa entered its greatest period of development, with direct official and non-official communication by air and sea with stable, healthy, well-rounded development, and greater scale, speed, and frequency of communication. This period can be divided into 3 stages. In the first, from 1949 to 1978, the foundation was laid for normal development. Why we divided this first stage? Because this is the founding of New China, and to the year China is opening up to the world, the policy implemented. And the second stage is from the year 1978 to the year 2000. Why to the year 2000? Because the year 2000 was the establishment of the FOCAC. This period saw several adjustments and more rapid development of China-Africa relations. At the final stage, from the year 2000 to the present, witnesses systematization and all-round development. And the first stage of the development occurred in 2 steps. The first, laying the foundation, lasted from October 1949, when the People's Republic of China was founded, until the year 1959, when China established the diplomatic relations with Guinea. The People's Republic of China was greatly concerned with the various national liberation movement and actively supported them. The Asian African Conference, held in April 1955, provided a good opportunity for China to establish direct diplomatic contact with Africa. The following year, Egypt became the first African country to establish diplomatic relations with China, opening up modern diplomatic relations between the 2 regions. 3 years later, in the year 1959, China-Africa relations crossed the Sahara Desert, with Guinea becoming the first African country, that means the south of the Sahara, to establish diplomatic relations with China, launching a phase of more comprehensive development in the relations between China and the African continent, and laying a solid foundation for more diplomatic initiatives. Over the next 20 years, development prevailed, with China and Africa relations growing at a steady, rapid pace. By 1978, during this period, China gave active support to the national independence and national liberation movement taking place across Africa, and offered newly independent African countries enthusiastic assistance from the development of their national economic agenda. At the end of 1978, China started its own great historical program of reform and opening up, a dramatic historical shift of national focus from class struggle to economic construction. Its international focus during this period moved away from revolution and war to peace and development. Against this historical backdrop, China-Africa relations entered a second phase in which adjustment and rapid development took enter stage. Politically, China gradually de-emphasized the ideological aspect of China-Africa relations. Economically, financial assistance gradually shifted towards mutual benefit, economic trade, and cooperation. At the same time, China carried out activities in the field of culture, medicine, and science and technology, promoting exchanges and cooperation. As a result, bilateral relations saw rapid development in this stage, and China-Africa trade increased each year with a large number of Chinese enterprises entered Africa. Because the time limited, I just give some ideas and give the summarize. You see the forecast I just mentioned. The establishment of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, the FOCAC, I think we all know that in the year 2000 marked the beginning of a new era in which China-Africa relations set up on the path towards all-round systematic development with great depth, scope, and vigor at a higher level. In a broader field and through more channels, creating a multi-dimensional, multi-layered, wide-ranging development trade. You see, in the year 2012, Thomas Boni Yayi, president of Benin, and then acting chairman of the African Union, said in his speech at the opening ceremony of the 5th Ministerial Conference of FOCAC, speaking on behalf of all African countries, that FOCAC has become an important platform for collective dialogue and a practical, effective mechanism for cooperation. In the 3 years period before that speech, the joint efforts of Africa and China had lent great importance to the achievements of the 4th Ministerial Conference of FOCAC, particularly in the execution on both sides of the 8 cooperation policies. And also the South African President Jacob Zuma, co-chairman at the following session of the forum, expressed his great appreciation for the selfless long-term assistance China had given to Africa. He said that China's devotion to Africa had found expression in many achievements and in greater cooperation between the two, especially in terms of human resources development, debt reduction, and investment. The efforts made by China to assist the development of Africa have been affirmed by many African countries, and the mechanism of FOCAC has made it possible for China and Africa to cooperate even more closely as strategic partnership for the benefit of the African and Chinese people. So, followed by, we can say that in the year 2015, our president, His Excellency Xi Jinping said, In conducting China's relations with Africa, we adhere to the principles of sincerity, practical results, affinity, and good faith, and uphold the value of friendship, justice, and shared interests. And we will work with our African friends to embrace a new era of win-win cooperation and common development. With this in mind, I propose that the new type of China-Africa strategic partnership be upgraded to a comprehensive strategic and cooperative partnership. To forge this partnership, we should strengthen the 5 major pillars. And after he mentioned the 5 major pillars, he also said to build an even closer China-Africa community with a shared future in the new era, China will, on the basis of the 10 cooperation plans already adopted, launch 8 major initiatives in close collaboration with the African countries in the next 3 years and beyond. This was his speech on the year 2018 in the Beijing summit of FOCAC. And last year in the keynote speech at the opening ceremony of the 8th Ministerial Conference of the FOCAC in Dhaka, our President, His Excellency Xi Jinping, mentioned that why do China and Africa have such a close relationship and so deep a bond of friendship? The key lies in an everlasting spirit of China-Africa friendship and cooperation forged between the 2 sides, which featured sincerely friendship and equality, win-win for mutual benefit and common development, fairness and justness, and progress with the times and openness and inclusiveness. So I think I talk about the China-African relations from history to today. Now we come to the next topic. This is to the we talked the debt caused by China's investment in China. This is many people talked about this issue. In this, we said the origin of the African debt burden. We first talked this. In fact, if we understand the nature of African countries' debt from the following 3 levels, we can clearly know that the so-called debt trap accusation is completely groundless. First of all, in terms of the origin of debt burden, we could see that loans from China are not an important reason. On the one hand, the debt accumulation of African countries was caused by historical reasons. During the second oil crisis in the 1970s, the price of international crude oil rose and the price of the raw materials fell, which led to the downturn of African countries' exports and the increase of import costs. The deterioration of trade led to the imbalance of international payment, and many African countries had financial crises. From the 1970s to the late 1990s, African countries experienced frequently military coups, wars, and internal conflicts. Military spending and war expenditure gave birth to a large amount of foreign debt. At the same time, it also led to a stagnation or even regression of economic and social development, and further weakened the solvency of African countries. On the other hand, the debt accumulation of African countries is caused by global macroeconomic conditions in recent years. From the perspective of the global industrial chain, Africa by now is still at the bottom. Most African countries only have a single industrial structure. Most of their export products are raw materials, and their export income is limited. Their economic growth depends heavily on the international market, and they are extremely sensitive and fast to changes to the international market. The global financial crisis in the year 2008 led to the decline of global commodity prices, which remained low for a long time, putting great pressure on the economic development and fiscal revenue of the African country, resulting in economic decline. In order to seek funds and stimulate economic development, African countries borrowed a large amount of African debt, of foreign debt. At the same time, with the economic downturn, the tax revenue of African countries decreases, and the reduction of fiscal revenue weakened the solvency. In recent years, the US dollar has continued to strengthen, and the currencies of most African countries have depreciated by various degrees, further increasing the debt burden of African countries. Secondly, from the currency sources of African countries' debt, the proportion of debt from China is not high as exaggeration made by the West. About 38% of the government debt of sub-Saharan African countries comes from commercial banks, 36% from multilateral financial institutions, such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, and 26% from loans of other governments. So China's loans will only account for a smaller proportion of Africa's external debt. According to the data of the China-Africa Research Project of Johns Hopkins University in the United States, China's loan to African countries have increased in recent years, but the proportion in African debt balance is still relatively very low, which has not exceeded 2% before the year 2011 and reached a historical high of 5% in the year 2016, mainly at the Johannesburg Summit of Foreign, that means the FOCAC. China promised to provide a total of $60 billion in financial support to Africa. And in the following year, China's loan to African countries fell sharply to about $11 billion. and have been stable since then. At present, debt risks of some African countries are higher, such as Burundi, Gambia, Cape Verde, the Central African Republic, Sao Tome and Principe, South Sudan, Chad, and Mauritania. But China should not be held accountable, since loans from China only take a small proportion of these countries' external debt. For example, China holds less than 2% of Cape Verde's debt. Gambia's foreign debt balance basically has no loans from China. While some other countries, such as Ethiopia, Ghana, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, and Sudan, have relatively large loans from China. But these countries have also obtained a large number of loans from other financial institutions and countries, and the proportion of Chinese loan is not very high. Only a few countries, China's debt does account a large proportion, such as Zambia and Djibouti. However, on the other hand, the main loan projects in these countries have long-term sustainable cooperation capacity and good benefit. On the other hand, both China and these countries are committed to taking appropriate measures to reduce debt risks. Thirdly, China-Africa Economic and Trade Cooperation helps to improve the economic development level of African countries, enhance their economic strength, effectively reduce debt demand, and improve their solvency. Africa is a continent with the most developing countries, whose economic growth and infrastructure construction need a lot of financial support. So it is crucial to obtain sufficient and reasonable prices funds. The large amount of funds provided by China to Africa is a direct force to support the development of African countries. In recent years, there has been an obvious positive correlation between China's economy and the African economy, which shows that China has become an important external driving force for Africa's economic development. To sum up, China's financial to African countries is a significant support to guarantee African countries' modernization, especially the full implementation of all fundamental development strategies called by the African Union Agenda 2063, instead of a so-called trap to erode sovereignty and development sustainability of African countries. And also, we talked about China's contribution to neutralize Africa's debt challenge. The Chinese government attached great importance to the sustainability of international cooperation project and the framework of Belt and Road Initiative. On April the 25th, 2019, the sub-forum of the second BRI International Cooperation Summit Forum officially released the BIR Debt Sustainability Analysis Framework, which is a data sustainability analysis tool based on the data sustainability analysis framework of the IBF and the World Bank for low-income countries and in combination with the actual situation of the countries along the Belt and Road. It is applicable to the debt sustainability assessment of the BRI low-income countries. The analysis framework helps to improve the scientific assistance and operation of investment and financial decisions for the BRI project, strengthen the debt management capacity of relevant countries and promotion the high quality development of the BRI. Firstly, debt risk of African countries should be monitored, as China is playing a more evident role in Africa's financial. Especially China has many large-scale projects in Africa, which has played a positive role in enhancing the indigenous capacity of the host country for economic and social development and strengthen China-African relations. It is necessary to stay alert to the low repayment capability of this project. By examining the operation of this project, however, it can be found that some projects have certain operational risks. If the operation is poor or sustained low repayment capability could be challenged, especially some large-scale infrastructure construction projects. For these projects, an early warning system regarding the capability of low repayment needed to be launched through cooperation between China and the host African countries, so as to ensure the sustainability of the project. Secondly, a clearer picture regarding China's financial in Africa needs to be sketched. And thirdly, current existing debt structure ought to be automatized. Investment in large-scale engineering and infrastructure projects need to be controlled, and more focus should be given to manufacturing projects. We should encourage labor-intensive processing industries and enterprises to carry out direct investment and build factories in Africa in the form of joint ventures, cross-share holdings and other forms, increasing technology transfer to African enterprises, and increase the employment ratio of Chinese fund enterprises to African local workers. Countries with high debt risk should be particularly cautioned in promoting large-scale project financing. It is necessary to strengthen communication with the African governments to carry out extensive field research, increasing capital investment in livelihood projects such as community hospitals and schools, and cooperation with the training project for local relevant personnel. Furthermore, lessons of some unsuccessful projects should be learned so as to provide detailed recommendation for other projects to improve its cooperation efficiency and portability. Fourth, international cooperation should be recommended. It is necessary to widely connect with the international multilateral organizations and improve China's international recognition and legitimacy of African countries' claims. I don't go into the details. We said that furthermore, the renminbi use and the renminbi return mechanism could be integrated into China-Africa cooperation. And we should establish a specialized financial platform to provide financing services for African countries to issue renminbi denominated government bonds and corporate bonds. African governments and enterprises are encouraged to engage in trade and pay for goods and services from China in renminbi, and we will further expand imports of indigenous African products, including primary process products and intermediate process products, and improve the balance of payment and external solvency of African countries. Now we're going to the last part. This is part 3, possible China-Europe cooperation in Africa. I already used up the time. Sorry, I will continue it and try to finish as quickly as I can. So this part I can't go into the detailed. I talk about one is the mode of cooperation between China and Europe. We all said that the trilateral international cooperation between China and Europe has been theoretical basis and practical needed. And the increase of the external demand from the international third-party market and the internal demand from China and the Europe have contributes to the cooperation. Firstly, the international third-party market, the external demand of trilateral cooperation is gradually expanding. The primary reason why China and the Europe and the EU can quickly reach an agreement on international trilateral cooperation is the continuous growth of the third-party market. The increasing demand for foreign investment from the vast number of developing countries has led to the relaxation of restrictions on foreign investment and the implementation of more active export-oriented economic policies, which has provided external demand for China and the EU to carry out international trilateral cooperation, and has also given China and the EU more choices of cooperation partners. Secondly, the internal demand of China and the EU has increased. At present, both China and the EU are in a critical period of economic development. Both sides place high hope on deepening international cooperation in innovative forms and promoting national development. The trilateral international cooperation between China and the EU is of very positive and important significance. It is conducive to the recovery and development of the world economy. At present, amid the pandemic impact, the world economy recovery still lacks strong support and impetus, while the economic recovery of developed countries is slow. Emerging economic almost collectively experienced a stall. Developing a real economy and expanding market demand is the best way to support world economic recovery. Hereby, promote trilateral cooperation in the international economy, combine the advantages of developed European countries and China as a world-leading emerging economy can effectively inject new impetus to the economic recovery agendas of different parties, especially developing countries. On the one hand, it can drive the capital and product output of European countries. On the other hand, it can promote China's industrial production capacity output. By combining these comparative advantages, developing countries could embrace new opportunities of industrial upgrading and job creation, which would inject new vitality into their post-pandemic recovery plan. Secondly, areas of China-European cooperation. There are two main ways for China and the EU to carry out into international trilateral cooperation: investment cooperation and the aid cooperation. The key areas of cooperation between the two sides should be the overlapping areas in the field of foreign direct investment and foreign aid. The advantages area either enjoyed by China or EU in the non-overlapping areas and areas with large third-party market demand and high investment value. According to this standard, the key areas of investment cooperation between the two sides are as follows. 1. High-end manufacturing, including aerospace, automobile, high-speed rail, steel, machinery, manufacturing, etc. That means in the aviation field, it is necessary to promote the civil aircraft industry with a good foundation for cooperation between the two sides to enter the third-party market. In the field of high-speed rail, we should promote the two sides to carry out relevant technical exchanges and R&D cooperation, and promote the construction of mainline railways and urban railways in the third-party market. In the field of automobiles, establishment of factories in third parties, expanding the third-party consumer market, improve the manufacturing level of the third party, and promote industrial upgrading. 2. Finance, including promoting the cooperation between financial institutions of both sides to setting up branches in the third-party market, promoting the financial institution of both sides to provide joint financial services and carry out equity investment business for Chinese enterprises, European enterprises, and related enterprises in the third-party market. Besides, China and Europe should also promote regular information communication between financial institutions of both sides on the financial support of tri-party cooperation, promote the financial institutions of both sides to innovate financial services modes in the tri-party cooperation, such as promoting the financial mode and combining public funds and private funds in the cooperation project. 3. Energy and mineral industry, including civil, nuclear energy, new energy development, exploration, development and processing of energy minerals, etc. In the field of civil nuclear energy, we should support enterprises of the two sides to carry out cooperations in the front end of the nuclear full cycle, medium and large reactor, and the back end of the nuclear full cycle in the third-party market. In the field of new energy, exploring cooperation in solar energy, wind energy, and other fields should be carried out. In the field of energy and mineral exploration, development and processing, enterprises of both sides are encouraged to cooperate in the third-party market, especially in countries along the Belt and Road and the resources-rich countries in Africa. 4. Infrastructure construction. Both sides are encouraged to operate to invest in infrastructure construction projects such as railway, airports, harbors, and telecommunications in the third-party market. 5. Scientific research and technology services. Both sides are encouraged to cooperate to set up R&D centers and technical service centers in the third-party market. Making full use of the technology and scientific research talents of the third parties and promote the improvement of the technical level and economic self-development ability of the third-party market. 6. Overseas industrial parks. Since overseas economic and trade operation zones are as important mode for China to carry out a foreign direct investment. You see that establishment of industrial parks overseas will also be an important means for China to carry out economic and trade cooperation, encouraging along the Belt and Road. Both parties should be encouraged to cooperate to set up industrial parks in the third-party market and take the industrial park as a platform to carry out a specific project of tripartite cooperation. Aside from investment cooperation, aid cooperation between the two sides should give special focus to following areas: agriculture and food security, economic and public infrastructure construction, education and training, medical and public health, environmental protection, and climate change responses. I don't go to details of that further aspects. And the third, I mentioned some recommendations for optimizing China-Europe cooperation. One, abide by the principles of a non-exclusive and non-discriminatory. Two, promote public-private partnership. You see, in the trilateral cooperation in the field of international investment, we should insist on promoting the joint participation of the national public sector and the private sector, give play to their different advantages, learn from each other's strengths, and promote multi-form and multi-level cooperation. In the implementation of a specific project, the PPP cooperation mode can be widely promoted, and the diversification of investment project. And the developed space can be broadened, and the rational allocation of resources and the risk of realized. Three is the uphold high standards for environmental protection, and the corporate social responsibility. You see, any international trilateral cooperation project must comply with the respective environmental protection standards of the three parties at the same time, and adopt the highest standard as far as possible. In order to promote sustainable economic and social development on the basis of protecting the third-party market ecosystem and the mutual resources, and contribute to the global response to the climate change, enterprises engaged in international trilateral cooperation must earnestly fulfill their social responsibility and make a corresponding contribution to the labor rights and interests, environmental protection, community construction, anti-corruption, cultural exchanges, charity promotion, scientific and technological development, and other aspects. Changfei. Dr. Qi.
Okay.
I just finished the lecture here. Maybe we come to the question.
Thank you very much indeed for your very extensive and very specific introduction to the general history of China-Africa cooperation, and responded to the current very controversial issues related to China-Africa matters. And last but not the least, Prof. shared his opinion about the possible cooperation, trilateral cooperation between EU, Africa, and China. And we had some questions in the chat. So, Professor Lee, do you want to respond to questions in the chat?
Okay. 就是你那个是吧？
对，这两个一样。
我看这个还大些。And the first question is, how do you see how is the pandemic and the current geopolitical situation going to affect or change the bilateral relations between China and Africa? What are going to be the main cooperation areas between the two sides in the short and middle term? Okay. This is a very good question. You see now the COVID-19 pandemic, they influenced the China-Africa relations mostly. The pandemic, they influenced the development, the economic development, and also especially the people-to-people contact and exchanges. So the China-Africa relationship has not been stopped by the pandemic. We, like today, we through the video, we through online contaction and the lectures, as we do with African scholars and African students in our country. Talking about the two sides, short-term and mid-term cooperation, I think we, in many aspects or many areas, first for economic circle or economic aspects, I just now mentioned the clear energy should be the main area China and Africa cooperation be strengthened. We also invite the EU to join the three-party cooperation. And also the digital economy. This is also the a very important part for the two sides, for China and Africa. We also said the influence of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, they influenced Africans' agriculture development and also the food crisis. So China and Africa in the short term and the middle term, they also learn each other, help each other, and also China invest mostly in African agriculture to help African countries to solve the food crisis, especially in the whole of Africa. The several countries, they face the most severe challenges of the food crisis because of the drought in recent years, and also the influence of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So I think in these areas, China and Africa, as well as EU, we can also join the hands to do the trilateral cooperation. And also in these aspects, we three parties can develop at the same time. And we also can, if we, Europe, China, and Africa develop faster, we should be a driving force of the recovery of the world economy. We see that the pandemic should be finished very soon after it finished, and the two sides China and Africa, the relationship, especially the people-to-people exchanges, will be boosted because these more than 2 years, the direct contact has been erupted by the pandemic. So the economic and the trade should be increased faster, and the people-to-people exchange should also be increased very fast. And the second question is, could the African countries take over China's old role in the world economy, thinking of the labor-intensive sectors? And this is a very good question. I think the African countries can do this, can take over China's role in the world economy, and especially the labor-intensive sectors. Why? I think there's 2 reasons. One is that according to the standard of African economic development, is now somewhat like China 30 or 40 years ago. At that time, China's economic boost, we implementing the reform and opening up to the world policy. So China's development mainly depends on the labor-intensive sector. This is from the economic perspective of the African development stage. The second is that Africa is rich of labor, especially the youth labor. This is also somewhat like China decades ago, like the 30, 40, or 20 years ago. China is rich of labor. So the rich of labor is the main basis or the foundation provided for the intensive sector. So I think African countries can take over China's role in the world economy, thinking of the labor-intensive sector. Besides, the African country, the economy should, if they want to develop faster, they also should the cooperation with the technology. In this field, just now I mentioned China, Europe, and the African countries, we can join hands and do trilateral cooperation and to push on the development of the African economy. Okay, some more questions or?
There's another question in the chat, Professor Lee.
还有一个 question， 一个问题。大姐，我离开一下。你能给我念一下吗？ 这个字太小，我看不见啊。
Okay.
Could you please read it for me?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your presentation. There are many African students studying in Chinese universities, a number that seems increasing, especially in the past decade. In your opinion, do they contribute to promoting cultural exchange beyond their study areas? And do you have any information on whether they stay in China after their studies in order to pursue a career or decide to return to their home country? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. It is in fact that you mentioned the African students studying in Chinese universities, the number seems increasingly year by year, especially in recent years. The number increasing, they have many reasons. One is that the government sponsorship increased. So more and more African students, they can come to Chinese universities sponsored by the government, by the Chinese government, the scholarship. The second reason is the main reason is the private students. They come to China to study. These students, they mainly study technology, medicine, and international relations. This number is much more than the government scholarship. Besides these two channels, we also have other channels. That is the big enterprises. That means the Chinese enterprises in Africa, they invest in Africa. They provide some scholarships to the African youth to study to China. And also some private sectors, private enterprises in our country. That means they invest or do business and trade with African countries. They also provide some scholarship. So this is why the increasing number of the students from Africa come to China. This is for the economic perspective. Also from economic perspective, in our side in China, is that the Chinese economy developed very fast in these recent decades and recent years, and they trust African countries to come to our country to make a study. And last year, our China-CEE Institute, which was established 3 years ago in the year 2019, which announced by our President, His Excellency Xi Jinping, at the FOCAC Summit in Beijing in September 2018. We organized a forum. That means the African students who study in China forum, and about 30 African students in China participate in our forum. This comes to the second part of your question. That means I have the information whether they stay in China after study in order to pursue a career or decided to return to their home countries. I think most of them will return to their home countries. That means to Africa, because in their speeches in the forum last year, organized by our institute, most of them said they come to China, they learn knowledge, learn technology. The purpose is to serve their motherland. So after the graduation in China, they will directly go to their country to serve their country's development, and also to become a bridge of China-Africa friendship. This is the information I got in the forum. The other reason is that I said the Chinese enterprises, both the private and the government prices, they sponsor the African students to study in China, and they will ask them to, after the graduation, they come back to Africa to serve in the enterprises, the Chinese enterprises. So this part of the African students will also come back to their country. Even though they worked in the Chinese enterprises, they also served for the development of their country. And a small part of the African students after graduation, they are staying in our country. This part will be very small. Why? Because some of them, they married with the Chinese people. So maybe the Chinese couple, they don't want to go to Africa. Or their children are studying in China. They don't want to return to Africa very soon. Maybe after their children's Chinese finishing schools, they'll go to African countries. So this small part will stay in China. And also another small part, they find a suitable for good jobs in China. Like a very famous Chinese medicine doctor, who is very famous in our country. His name is Diala from Mali. He's now working in Chengdu, Sichuan province. He has a Chinese family here. And he's a very famous Chinese medicine doctor. So he may not return back to Mali or African countries because African people, they are seldom know Chinese medicine. When they return back to their country, they may have no patience. They may lose his job. So he'll stay here. And just now I mentioned the Chinese students. We call the African people called the Kenya called the Muammar Sharif. She, after 10 years of study in China, he got the bachelor degree, master degree, and also PhD degree. She returned back to Africa, to Kenya. She is now staying in Nairobi, and she told me she will open a Chinese clinic there. So I think most of them will return back to Africa to serve their countries and to become the bridge of China-Africa friendship. And just a very small part of them will stay in China, and also they'll serve the Chinese people, and also is a bridge of the friendship of China and Africa.
Okay.
Dr. Qin,
Okay.
some other questions or finish questions?
Yeah, no other questions. Because of the limitation of time, we have to finish this lecture. So thank you again, Professor Li, for your thought-provoking lecture. And dear friends and colleagues, thank you very much indeed for being here with us today. So bye-bye. See you next lecture.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. T, and thank you for your institute, and thank you for everyone to today's lecture. Actually, in fact, the 3 parts of our lecture, each part should be need 1 hour. So should be 3 lectures. I put it together, and the limitation of time. Sorry for lasting half an hour of the time and keep you longer on time. And after the pandemic, welcome you to China, and maybe I can find a choice or opportunity to visit Europe. We can talk about face to face, and we also hope we can all go to Africa. We can talk about African topics and talk about China, Europe, and Africa trilateral cooperation. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye, everyone.